Hello, do come in. I'm just making the tea. I'm tech-selling best author, Gilliam Wallagher, and this is One Thing More, episode 36. We don't have any music, I'm afraid, so here's a scone.
So here's a scone? What?
When caught in an awkward situation, have a scone. It's sort of like the, I'm all grouchy. Well, here, have a scone. Why? Because you're always rude and awful when you are hungry. Yes.
Are you now just imagining a very posh version of the Snickers advert?
Yeah, Snickers, that's it, Snickers.
Brilliant.
Personally, I'm more of an Eccles Cakes man myself, but I do like a good scone every now and again. Welcome to one of the strangest editions of One More Thing we will ever do. And the reason for this is twofold. First, it's me here, Charles Martin, editor of MacNN, not William Gallagher, best-selling tech author. But we do still have good old Malcolm Owen in Wales.
Hello.
See? That was totally not a recording from several episodes back.
You're listening to the One More Thing podcast from MacNN.
And we're going to do half a show for you tonight because of something that happened on the MacNN podcast, which, incidentally, if you don't listen to it, you should. The thing that happened was managing editor Mike Worthley and I, well, when we get together, we do tend to chat. A lot. But this particular week just passed, we talked about a couple of important stories. So we thought, oh, you know what? This is about 15 minutes more, but we don't want to add 15 minutes to the MacNN podcast. I know where we can shove it in. We can shove it into One More Thing against their will because William's not here to stop us. That's what. So the second half of the show is going to be actually a bit of leftover MacNN podcast. Sounds tacky when I put it like that. Sorry. But Malcolm Owen is here, and he and I are going to spend the first half discussing, well, the big story of the week, which is Apple's financial report. Generally speaking, this was considered to be super bad news. I mean, Apple's market value dropped by $40 billion after this came out, and it was an odd reason for it. I mean, yes, they made less money and less revenue this quarter than they did in the year-ago quarter, but they still made money. They just didn't quite make as much as Wall Street had expected, really.
Well, just to be clear here, we're talking, for most companies, this will be a stupid amount of money, quite frankly.
Yeah, $50 billion in revenue.
And that is just insane. I mean, $50 billion in revenue, that's down $11 billion year on year.
The money they lost is more than a lot of companies make.
And that's the problem, just the severe cut down compared to last year people are worried about. It's weird because you have this company that is doing fantastically well, quarter upon quarter upon quarter upon quarter, and then suddenly it's gone down quite a lot, but it's still making what many people would describe as a shed load of cash.
Indeed, that's exactly right.
Proper financial term there, shed load of cash.
I think we've got our episode title.
Yes. It's doing so well for so long, of course it's going to have a little bit of a downturn at some point. The problem is, when you're this big, you do not have a little bit of a downturn. A little bit of a downturn for this company is the equivalent of
the entire gross national product of Ecuador or something. You know, it's shockingly large. You're right. There's an economy of scale here that's going on. But I really do feel like there were two things that analysts and Wall Street generally, the press in general, overlooked. One of them, Tim Cook addressed, I thought, pretty well. I'm not sure if the analysts bought it, but that's only because it's true. And that is that his explanation was, look, the iPhone 6 was an anomaly. And the reason for that is because it was the first one we'd ever done with larger screens, and that triggered a huge amount of pent-up demand. So that was a freakish cycle that was abnormal. What you should be doing is comparing the iPhone 6S cycle and sales and revenues to the iPhone 5S cycle and sales and revenues. And when you look at that, the iPhone 6S is doing about as well. Not quite perfectly evened up, but this huge loss that we're talking about isn't really a huge loss anymore, if you look at it that way. And then the second thing that I think everybody missed is the entire smartphone market has stagnated. It is not growing. There isn't any other company that reported even remotely like those profits in the smartphone sector. Almost every manufacturer of smartphones loses money on them. And even Samsung, we just got their figures, their profit was only about a quarter of what Apple's profit was. So there is nobody in the smartphone business doing as well as Apple, even when Apple is doing badly.
It is a fantastic problem to have.
I can understand totally when investors and even analysts who don't pay close attention to Apple misinterpret this, but my position is, yeah, it looks bad. I know. But let's wait until the iPhone 7 comes out. Then we'll know whether it's bad. If the iPhone 7 doesn't set the world on fire again, like all the previous ones have, then we've got real problems. This, though, is mostly just seasonal and a tough compare against the iPhone 6 because it was the first larger screen phone. Here's an interesting stat that we found that is kind of amazing. Now, Amazon is going to report their financials after this podcast is recorded, unfortunately, so we won't know for sure. But we know Amazon, and we also know what quarter we're talking about here, as in it's not Christmas. The way Amazon works is that they basically look for revenue growth rather than profits most of the year. The only time they seem to pay any attention to profit is when Christmas rolls around. So I'm expecting them to report either a modest loss or a tiny, tiny profit. I mean, like couch money. Hey, if you got $10, I've got $20, that kind of profit. We'll just call Amazon a wash here, assuming Amazon just breaks even. If I took the profit from Google and indeed all of the Alphabet companies, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon, and put them together, they did not make as much profit this quarter as Apple. Even in the worst quarter that Apple has had in the past 13 years, they're still making more money than the top 4 internet companies put together. Doesn't seem so bad all of a sudden.
Certainly doesn't, but at the same time it does highlight the problem of being so successful and then suddenly having that blip.
It depends. The rumor market at the moment would have you believe that the iPhone 7 expected this fall is going to be nothing special. It'll just be another iPhone 6S to this year's 6S. Does that make any sense? No, doesn't, does it? What I mean is that it will just make some minor tweaks, but not be the radical redesign and rethink of the phone that we've come to expect from whole number iPhone.
Just to be clear, with rumours that are out there at the moment, we keep on seeing the current 6S design quite a lot in anything that's visual. There is still, 4 or 5 months before Apple really has to nail down the exact perfect design.
Yeah, and before it would even start going into production, really.
Yeah, so it's a case of maybe what we're seeing now in terms of the leaks could just be a design-based decoy, if you will. It could just be that they're using the existing design for all their testing and everything so that they can show off the proper redesign and we can go, ooh, that's new.
Wouldn't that be great? Oh, man.
Oh, yes.
The bottom line here, I think, is that the stock market kind of plays by its own rules, and it's, as many people have said before me, it's kind of more like a casino than a market. But I think for people who play Apple in the short term, this is all very upsetting. If you look at a chart of the stock of Apple, for the last 13 years, it's been nothing but up, 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 up. And suddenly we have this stumble. We have this drop. People who are looking at the stock, or the company for that matter, in the short term are seeing things, I think, very, very much worse than they actually are. Even though we're going to have to see it for another 2 quarters to come. They didn't talk about the September quarter, but the June quarter is going to be bad, and the September quarter is going to be worse because everybody's going to know the iPhone 7 is just around the corner, so I'm certainly not buying a phone now. The real test is going to be Christmas. That's it. If Apple doesn't do very well over Christmas, that's trouble. I think the long-term investors should just ignore this. I think it's a bump in the road. Let's move on to the MacNN Podcast segment. Apologies to William Gallagher for inserting our own show into his show. But it was a good discussion. So that makes for the kind of good dramatic tension that you like. I hope for those of you who have never heard the MacNN Podcast before, this will give you a little bit of insight into what that podcast is like. For those of you who do listen to both of these podcasts, thank you, first of all. And secondly, this part you didn't hear before. It's all new. So here we go. China, my China. We've got a couple of stories that have happened in the China market right now. The big one, and kind of disturbing one, is that suddenly Apple's iTunes stores, the movie stores and the music store, I think, had to be shut down. Boom, gone. And at first, Apple wouldn't say anything about it. And then finally, it sort of leaked out that the Chinese government had shut them down.
I'm not sure when the story broke that Apple knew what the situation was.
Yeah, they may not have. It's not like the authorities there routinely call people and say, by the way, this is what we're going to do.
8 or 9 hours later, Cupertino said something about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not shocked. When we got the reason why, I was like, yeah, okay, big surprise. And the reason why was they're talking about its business practices. But I think that's code for, I'm not so happy about Western culture.
I think it's something to do with that, but China just seems to have this attitude that you can be successful there, but only so much. And particularly when you start hurting the local manufacturers.
Yeah.
To be fair, a lot of countries do this. The United States does this. But at some point, you're only allowed so much success, and certainly nowhere near an Apple level of success.
I think this is going to backfire, though, because the app economy feeds a lot of mouths in China.
Yeah, it really does. And so, yes, I do think that they're eventually going to have to back off on this a little bit. But it ties into the exact other story that came out, which is that the iPhone SE, which there's been rumors that it hasn't done that well in North America.
Which I think is crap, by the way.
Which I think is crap, too. But the rumors paint it as reasonably good, but not a huge hit. But that's because they're comparing it to all other iPhones, which is silly. But the iPhone SE has been a big hit in China because it is, even though it's still premium priced by their economy standards, it's way lower than any other iPhone before. Again, the barrier to entry has been lowered way significantly. And, people who are like, the iPhone is a dream that I'll never be able to afford, now suddenly say, oh, you know what? With a little stretching, I could probably swing this. And there's the mystique of the iPhone in particular. So it turns out it's a big hit over there. We were able to sort of work out, and although these figures are probably not anywhere near exact, but the iPhone SE, Apple reported that they sold about 12 or 13 million units on their opening weekend.
Yeah.
Which is really good, but that is worldwide. And we think China accounted for about 3.5 million of that. And that's really good.
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm not sure Wall Street's going to be happy about it, because I think Wall Street's going to look at this, it's a new iPhone. Well, it should be selling so many more, but I think that misses the point of the device.
Yeah.
It is going to impact the average selling price per device, and Wall Street's going to flip out about that. It is going to, if they didn't sell as many as Wall Street wants them, the financial report might be a little yucky, for lack of a better term. And the phone wasn't out long. It was like what Apple always does. They've got 2 weeks of sales to report in a quarterly on a new device. They do that in October, and they just did that with the SE. Mm-hmm. I have one. My 5C, I said, well, no, I'm done with this, and I'm going to get the SE. And it's an iPhone 5. It's an iPhone 5 with new internals, and it fits my lifestyle better. And frankly, I think it fits a lot of lifestyles better. Yeah. Now, if it had the A8 processor, I would not have bought it, but it had the A9.
There was a theory that somebody floated to me that made sense at the time. I'm thinking about it more, and I'm not sure if it's going to hold up, but their rationale was they put the absolute best of everything into this phone because they are never going to revise it.
I think that's a reasonable assumption. And it's not the absolute best. The AC chipset is slower than it is in the iPhone 6 series.
Well, I think they put everything in there that they could and keep the temperature cool, but I mean, they really did try to make it the best possible iPhone at that size. And arguably, it's the best 4-inch smartphone that's ever been made.
Well, I think the SE is probably pretty indicative of this is it.
Yeah. By not putting a number on it, I think what they'll probably do is sell it for 4 years and then it will be gone.
Yep. That seems reasonable to me.
That's your last hurrah. I would sort of like them to do so. The Mac Pro SE, Apple, I'm just saying. One more.
Well, Apple does like that SE very much.
And it should be awesome and then never update it again.
Let's see. There's the SE, the SE30, which was a dumb name.
Yeah.
There was the iMac SE.
Yes.
I think it was the DV Plus SE, wasn't it?
Yes, I think so.
It had just a ridiculous name.
Yeah.
And now the iPhone SE.
Yeah, and we probably should get an iPod SE, quite frankly, because if, as I'm theorizing here, the SE moniker is a kiss of death, then we need an iPod SE too, as well.
An iPod SE. I don't even know what that would be.
The last ever iPod Touch.
I don't think anyone's even making 1.8-inch hard drives anymore, so that's not even an option.
Oh, no, yeah, they've moved to flash storage and all that a long time ago, but that's it. So here's the thing, though, is that the iPhone SE was seen to be hurting Xiaomi and Huawei and Oppo and Vivo.
Love those company names. Aren't they nice? They just roll off the tongue.
Well, in China, they probably do.
They probably do. That's a good point.
When I think of Huawei, I always think of The Lion Sleeps Tonight.
Oh, okay.
Somebody should do that. And Xiaomi, I got used to how to say that. But the other ones, Vivo and Oppo, they sound like rejected Marx Brothers, perhaps. But
wow, I'm not even going to touch that one. That could go some very bad places.
No, that may get edited. Nevertheless, these companies apparently are hurting because of this. If the iPhone is increasing its market share in China, and we don't know that for sure, but if they are from the sales of the iPhone SE, they're probably not taking it from Samsung, or not very much anyway. And we saw this in America too, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Well, China as a market, there's definitely a need for a $50 phone.
Yeah.
India as a market, there's a need for a $50.
Yeah, I would be interested to see how it's doing over there. But if there's more iPhones being sold, then that means there are less of the rest in the field, and that's mostly Chinese makers. So naturally, at some point, yeah, I'm unsurprised to hear the government stepping in.
Yeah.
This is not how you handle that, though. Dropping the iTunes store, I think the Chinese government thinks this is going to break the ecosystem, but it is not.
I don't think so. Again, the first thing I thought of when this came out is, well, since Apple opened their app stores and such in China, the developers are not submitting to the U.S. App Store. They're submitting to the China App Store for ultimate promulgation in the U.S. App Store. And that changed when the stores opened in China. It was Chinese requirements to do so. So now with iTunes down, is iTunes Connect down?
I don't know. That's a good question.
So can these developers not submit apps anymore? It just seems to me that this is a problem. It seems to me that they're cutting off money to developers in the country.
Yeah. Or maybe they're trying to make a grandstanding play to get Apple to make some more concessions. And then they'll be like, all right, well, we fought for our people, but, ultimately we gave.
I'm not seeing necessarily a conspiracy, but it came out the same day that Bruce Sewell said at the congressional hearing that we haven't given our source code to China. Instead of just hinting at it last time, he straight up said, no, we didn't give China a damn thing. So
yeah, that's true. There has also been some speculation floating around about a certain movie that won in some film festivals recently, but is banned in China, but it was offered either accidentally or whatever on the Chinese Apple Store. And so
there are 10,000 explanations, and we're not going to get a straight answer out of Apple. We're not going to get a straight answer out of the Chinese government.
Certainly not.
Right? I mean, we can't get a straight answer out of the FBI.
Speaking of sales, something remarkable happened and almost nobody noticed. The Consumer Intelligence Research Panel, which every so often talks about one of several companies that talk about iPhones in the terms of U.S. market share. Their way of measuring this, which I think is probably the best method, is going to get you the most accurate figures other than what Apple knows, and that is activations. They just count activations.
Carrier activations.
Because that's a real world sell-through indication. Hello, Amazon.
Shipments.
Shipments are nothing. We've gone on about that before. So between the March quarter a year ago, Apple had 28% of the market, and Samsung in particular, but Android generally, had over 60, almost 70. This is now in 1 year, and the only thing that's really changed, because it's too new for the iPhone SE to have made any impact, and in fact, they're not even covered in this report. The only thing that changed was the introduction of the iPhone 6S and the 6S Plus.
And the Samsung Galaxy, the new Galaxies.
Yes, the Galaxy S7, you're right. And suddenly, Apple is at 40%. Samsung, which had 37% a year ago, still has 37%. They have grown zero over the last year. And Apple went from 28 to 40. That is huge. Absolutely huge. And also for Android overall, it's 57%. 57% Android, 40% iOS. This is in America only. If you add those two figures together, you get 97% of the market is in these two camps, and all the other competitors make up a total of 3%. Now,
Windows Phone, and BlackBerry.
And BlackBerry hanging on for dear life.
Well, BlackBerry's non-Android device.
First of all, that's a dying market, and it's it's almost all taken. That's the other thing. There's only one other place to poach more users from, and that is Samsung. Of that 57%, Samsung is 37 of it. So that means every other Android maker has to fight for 20%. Apple and Samsung have 80.
See, I would have thought that the Google devices with pure Android would have done better in this than Samsung's 30%, than fighting for the remaining 20.
Yeah, I don't have an easy or obvious explanation for it, but I do notice that Google doesn't appear to me to market like Samsung does, so maybe that's something to do with it.
Yeah, they don't really care.
There is the other factor. I don't mean to be ragging on Android here, but most Android devices have an even more limited shelf life than iOS devices, which is ridiculous. 3 major releases later, you're done. You're done. Your device no longer going to accept any more Android. And that's even from Google themselves. 3 major releases, that's it. For the most part, Apple seems to be able to keep it going for a little while longer, not a great deal longer.
The problem is with the older devices and running the newer OSs is the same problem there's always been with older devices running newer OSs, is there's just not enough resources in the older devices to support the new features and the demands it puts on the hardware.
Yeah.
So while in mobile especially, you need the new OSs for security, it's just not practical on some of this old hardware to install.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and he said that he is ready. Finally, he's replacing his iPad 2 this year. I was like, wait a minute. Did you say iPad 2?
Well, how many times has it been bricked by Apple since then?
None for him, because he's never upgraded the operating system.
Well, you see, that's a problem, though.
Yeah.
That's not being a good internet neighbor.
No. Well, I think he may have upgraded it once, but that was it. Yeah. That's an iPad from 2011? Yes, 11. And 5 years later, he got 5 years out of it.
I had purged all of the iPad 1s out of this house.
Yeah.
We have one back. I have no genuine idea where it came from. One of the family members is using it as a Scrabble machine, basically. And it still runs. They're not getting on the internet with it, so I don't see any compelling reason to take it off, to disconnect it from the world.
No.
And that's the problem with Apple's iPad sales numbers.
Yeah.
You buy an iPad and you say, well, how could the next one be so compelling? What's it going to have that I don't already have? So to heck with it.
The first time that they really did something that would make people go, okay, maybe I need to trade it in, was the iPad Pro, because it had the pencil. It had the pencil. Mm-hmm. There are other reasons why it is pretty awesome, like size, for example, but more than that, it was, even to the most unaware consumer of what the whole iPad thing is all about, they could go, that is obviously different than the model that preceded it, because now you can draw on it. That was a huge psychological difference.
I can't help but feel that the short gap between the iPad, was it the 2 and the 3 or the 3 and the 4?
The 3 and the 4, because I bought a 3 and I'm still bitter about this.
Yeah, I can't help but feel that was a problem.
It really was. It angered a lot of people like me.
Yeah.
Because I bought it on day 1, first day, and 7 months later, the new one was out. And I just thought, what?
Yeah.
Oh, man, this is old now.
This is old now.
You know, I have an iPad Air 2 now, and I'm still very, very happy with it because it's still well supported. But I certainly hope that Apple will not go down that path of, as Android has done, which is every 2 or 3 years, because they put theirs out about every year. Every 2 or 3 years and you're done. That's it.
Well, I'm a tech head, and the iPad Pro we have in the house I share with multiple family members. My personal iPad is an iPad 4.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I mean, I guess they didn't call it the iPad 4. I guess they called it the new iPad.
Yes.
Something. They had some goofy name for it. But the truth of the matter is it's an iPad 4.
Right. Mid 2014 or whatever.
Whatever.
But you've got more than, a couple of years use out of it now. So
yeah, I've had this for a long time, and, it's my media consumption device. The iPad Pro is great for reading, but if I'm not sitting in a traditional reading stance, it's unwieldy.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Even an iPad 2 can still, if your primary use for it is as a Kindle, then it's still a great Kindle.
Yeah, but you should be on iOS 9.
You should be on
regardless,
iOS 9.
For safety more than anything else.
More than anything else.
I'm on record on this podcast for saying that the iPad is the best ebook reader ever.
And so everybody run out and buy something that can run iOS 9 right now.
You know how this is supposed to be the one more thing to the main podcast? That recording is basically the first instance of the one more thing having something that's one more thing on it from the main podcast. So we're actually doing our job for once here by not doing our job.
So there we go. That was the segment. I hope you enjoyed it. All right. I guess it's time for Thingies of the Week. Malcolm, let's start with you. What is your Thingy of the Week? Well, what is it? This isn't TV. You can't just hold it up. Here we go. Wait, is it this?
No, it's this. What it is, in fact, is hook and loop cable ties.
Oh, hook and loop cable ties. Okay, so that's the UK term for the generic Velcro. Very good.
It's Velcro, yes. I've been cleaning up my desk because although I'm in a different house than I was a couple of months ago, I'm still having to sort out all my stuff and making it all tidy and everything, and I have so many damn wires.
Tell me about it.
If I didn't have these, I would be so close to just bringing out the duct tape.
Yeah. Well, very good. I hope it helps organize your office. My thingy of the week surprised me. I've been an Apple Watch owner for a while, and I like it enough that I wanted to see if I could maybe accessorize a little bit. And so I started looking at bands. I've been using the sport band that it came with since I first got it. And I thought, you know what I'd like is really something with a magnetic clasp. And that led me to the Milanese loop. So I'm looking at Apple's Milanese loop and I'm thinking it's $150. It sure is nice though. I even tried one on in an Apple store, was very impressed with it, but I just couldn't see myself spending that kind of money. And then one day I was looking at MacNN deals because I read those MacNN daily deals all the time with my hand on my wallet. And I saw a combination offer, a company called MaxBoost. One was a black Milanese band with a magnetic clasp, and the other was a little stand, not especially anything special, kind of Apple Watch stand. I thought, I could use a stand. The two of them together, I've forgotten the exact price, but less than $40. I got the band, and it is magnificent. I have had the Apple one on my wrist, and I cannot tell the difference between these two. Perhaps time and wear will reveal the differences and the lower quality. But so far, and I'm several months into it now, this MaxBoost band has been just as good as the $150 Milanese band. The MaxBoost stand was kind of meh. It's a stand. It works. But this Plexus band, as they call it, from MaxBoost, that's my thing of the week. Well, that concludes this totally hijacked and truly one more thing-ish episode of One More Thing. I've been both Gilliam Wallagher and Charles Martin, the editor of MacNN, and over there in Wales is Malcolm Owen. Well, I think that just about wraps it up for this episode. A truly One More Thing-ish episode, a merged One More Thing and MacNN Podcast episode of One More Thing. I am both Gilliam Wallagher and MacNN Editor Charles Martin. Let's be real. Substituting for William Gallagher, over there in Wales is Malcolm Owen.
Who is also playing Dobbert Rowney Jr.
And we want to thank you for listening. Good night, everybody.
Good night.